Yesteryear is actually about a trad husband. Now, before I start this video, I want to say that this is not a male apologist sort of video. Caleb did some really bad shit, especially towards the latter half of the novel. But I do think it's really important to acknowledge and discuss how online spaces and also the pressures that our friends, family, society puts on us can drive us into making decisions that we ultimately disagree with and regret. So I read Yesteryear and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since, but ultimately what was really interesting to me about the novel wasn't necessarily Natalie, but it was Caleb. Natalie isn't as interesting to me because I feel like I know a million Natalies, you know, like the fake religious types, the fake religious like homeschooling mom types, especially on like Instagram and social media. They're just everywhere. And because most of like the trad life accounts are run by the wives and not the husbands, which is something we're gonna come back to later, it was interesting to see the point of view, the perspective of a husband trapped in this dynamic, because we often don't hear from them. You may not know this, but unfortunately I spend a great deal of time on Reddit, specifically in like the manosphere red pill communities. And I also really enjoy arguing. It's one of my core personality flaws. But often when I'm talking to these men, I mention the word patriarchy and the conversation just quickly devolves. And so I've learned not to say that word because a lot of men think that patriarchy means the subjugation of women by men, which it just doesn't mean. So the patriarchy is the social position where men hold most of the power, but men still can be and often are subjugated. And I say that, but by that point, nobody's listening and everyone thinks that I'm attacking them for being a man and I'm like misandrist or whatever. And I think that Caleb's story is a really good example of the patriarchy being bad for men too. So picture this. You're a 19-year-old, handsome, meaty son of a senator who is starting their freshman year at Harvard, not necessarily by their own merit, but on like the social cachet of their parentage. You're supposed to go to Harvard, so you can go to Harvard. It's on autopilot. You're a Nepo baby. You're just going through the motions, and so far you've been able to prove to at least yourself that you deserve to be there to a high enough standard that you're kind of starting to believe a little bit. And then you meet this woman, and she's smart, she's beautiful, she is so intelligent, and she's from a small town, and she got to Harvard all on her own, by her own merit. And she's a goal, a passion, a twinkle in her eye that you have not seen on anyone else in real life. And a year later, you're married, you have your first child, you're supposed to be happy, but you're not. You feel listless. Everyone keeps pressuring you to get a job, but you have no idea what to do because you realize that you're not actually good at anything. The pressure on you is enormous, and because you're supposed to be the best at everything you try, and you know you're not going to be the best at anything you try, you just decide not to try. Your wife is telling you over and over that you need to step up, be a man, be a provider, get a job. And you agree, she's right. You have to be a provider, that's what society is telling you to do, but you just have no idea how. The only thing you're good at is being a dad. Being with your daughter lights up your world. She is the best thing that ever happened to you. You love spending time with her, but you can't really spend a lot of time with her because you have to cosplay being the provider dad type that you're just not. And even doing that is never enough to satisfy anyone around you. One day, you volunteer in your daughter's class and you have an epiphany. You should be a teacher. Being a teacher lies exactly at the nexus of your skill set. You get to be around children, watch them laugh and learn and grow and help them become full, wonderful human beings. You're so excited, you go home, so ready to tell your wife you finally figured out what your purpose is. And as soon as you tell her, her face just drops. She looks horrified. Fuck no, she says. Would you ever have a dream or a passion again after that? That is Caleb's story. The one thing that he ever thought he would be good at, the one thing that ever lit up his life, was shot down immediately by the person that was supposed to care about him the most. And then Natalie concocted this whole farm life, trad, homesteading idea, and Caleb is excited, he goes along with it, but mostly because that was what she said her dream was, not because it was his dream. It just happened to perfectly coincide with the ideal image that he was supposed to be portraying to society, and so it fit and he went for it. But he wasn't good at it. Cows died. So many cows died. That was so sad to read about in the book. And they couldn't even be organic because he couldn't figure it out. And he didn't actually do any of the farm work. He was just spending hours upon hours on like farming forums and websites trying to figure out what the fuck he was supposed to be doing. And he had no idea. He was bleeding money, but he was from the outside doing everything like he was supposed to be doing. He was doing everything correctly. There was never an option of failure. There was never a discussion. There was never room to pivot. It was, this is what you're supposed to be doing, Caleb, you will do this thing. And contrast that with Natalie, who has an idea and just immediately goes for it and succeeds immediately. Natalie very clearly wears the pants in this relationship, and Caleb knows it. It eats him up inside because it's not supposed to be like this, and he can't discuss it with his wife because that'd be showing weakness to his wife, and he can't do that either. I can't imagine being in a relationship where you're not actually allowed to be known to one another. To me then, it's no wonder he started on the online radical forums thing, because when you're so desperate for connection, you will find it wherever you can, and groups like that know how to sink their claws in. I'm not saying that he's innocent. He spread hateful and harmful rhetoric and should be criticized for doing so, but in many ways he was much less prepared to guard against that rhetoric than Natalie was. Natalie is smart, driven, engaged, she creates her own opinions and is not easily swayed by public opinion, as we saw with her time at Harvard, and she has the ability at this point to earn her own income. Contrast that with Caleb, who is not particularly smart, driven, engaged, is very easily influenced by his family and the societal structure around him, and has very little earning potential on his own if he is cut off by his family. Caleb actually fits the tragic wife archetype better than Natalie does, in my opinion. And again, I can understand why Shannon was so appealing to him. She's young, liberal, from the big city, everything that he was told that he shouldn't want and could not be, and she challenges him. She actually has conversations with him. I mean, Caleb knew that Natalie didn't actually mean what she was saying or doing when she was just like smiling and keeping sweet, but they couldn't actually have a conversation about it. I can imagine that it'd be absolutely infuriating to know that your partner doesn't actually agree with you and respect you and thinks that you're a horrible decision maker, but won't actually talk to you about it, just let you keep failing over and over and over again. Or go behind your back and have daddy save you. And again, that doesn't make him innocent or not complicit, but I do think that it means that he is also a victim of the patriarchy. He is a victim of the same system that he ends up perpetrating in the latter half of the novel in the other timeline towards Natalie. Caleb was never going to be what the patriarchy wanted to be, but he knew that he only had two choices. He was going to be beaten into submission, or he was going to die trying. And in the end, he became awful and brutish and cruel, but also stayed fundamentally weak. He never actually had to hunt or provide, but Natalie had to put her money where her mouth was, so to speak, and actually like do laundry and cook like it was 1855. Caleb never had to do that. He just went and sat in an air-conditioned home and like watched football all day, and then brought home fake meat. I don't even, I guess like pre-skinned deer or whatever, but he was cosplaying the entire time, even when they were supposed to be doing it for real. I think Caleb's story is a really eloquent and clear example of what happens when we don't actually make our own decisions and we bury our desires deep down inside and let society and social expectations dictate what we do or don't do. And to me, his story is actually more frightening because I think most of us can imagine being like swept up by the inertia of life and just going along with what's expected of us. And that's a far closer reality than being like a multi-millionaire trad influencer who's just like awful, right? And actively cruel like Natalie is most of the time. That's that. Thanks for watching.